What's the good word, y'all? Welcome to New York Jets Syndicate channel. It's your boy DKB here, and there was a very interesting three-team trade that was proposed by Bill Barnwell when he was kind of doing his annual NFL mock, all trades. Basically, every single pick has a potential trade that he thinks either in an ideal world or in like a crazy setting could work out. This one's definitely a lot more fantastical rather than realistic, but nonetheless, let's dive into the details. So the three teams involved are going to be the New York Jets, the Green Bay Packers, and the Seattle Seahawks. Now, the crazy thing about this trade is not only do the New York Jets get Aaron Rodgers in this situation, we still keep a first round pick, and we ultimately end up being able to recoup our third rounder. So here's the details. The Jets would ultimately get quarterback Aaron Rodgers. We would get the the 78th pick in the third round of this year's draft from the Packers, and we would get the number 20 pick in the first round from the Seattle Seahawks. The Packers are going to end up getting the number 13 pick from us, and they'll get a conditional third round pick. We'll see what the elevators or the escalators would potentially be in that situation, but kind of what we've been accustomed to, right? If we make the playoffs and we get a certain amount of wins, then most likely that becomes a number two or a number one. And then as for the Seahawks, who jumps into this trade, they end up benefiting because while they give up their round one pick, they end up getting two high selections in the second round. Number 42 from the Jets, and then number 45 from the Packers, to help them continue to kind of build some depth and things, especially in a draft where, as mentioned, not a lot of blue chip talents really outside of maybe Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. And then depending on how you feel about Bryce, Stroud, the quarterbacks, all that kind of stuff. But outside of that, and maybe Peter Skoronski, people aren't excited necessarily about the top 10 picks or being in the top 10 within this particular draft. So if you can trade back a bit, especially in that mid tier of the first round or on day two, where some of these guys that you would love a lot more on day two will fall, it's pretty much the best situation for you. So the thing I love, obviously, in this trade, we get Aaron Rodgers. That is what the focal point of this entire offseason has been since we got the confirmation that Aaron Rodgers wanted to play for New York. Second, we drop back 7 picks to number 20, which in most of the mock trades I've seen, the top tackles that we love are already off the board. You don't probably want to, the value at number 13 for defensive tackles like Kalijah Cansey, Brian Bresee, not great whatsoever. And then you'd have to take a risk on a guy like a Brian Branch, or you'd have to overreach maybe a little bit for a guy like Darnell Wright, for example, at that slot. So if you go back to pick 20, you start to get a lot better value, and then you probably still are in a position where you get your pick of the litter of the top of this like second tier essentially for a lot of these guys in this draft. Keep in mind, a lot of the people that have a little bit more notoriety, think Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, all of those kind of guys, they've been saying for a while, and very early in the evaluation, I believe both Todd McShay and Mel Kiper said they only had like 17 to 19 people with the first round grade. And obviously, somewhere within that range is a little bit typical, but then those numbers have started to drop from a lot of other people that review the draft that I've seen, to about 9 or 10 players. So we're probably already missing out on a lot of those guys, or their positions we don't need, like cornerback anyways, at least not in the first round. So you set yourself up very well, right? And then we did have to give up a second round pick to the Seahawks, but we already have one courtesy of the Elijah Moore trade. And then ultimately you get back a third rounder from Green Bay. So it would be nice to still have those back-to-back picks, but you're still set up to have a pick in every round until the 7th, I believe, in this particular trade. As mentioned, the Seahawks get great value at the top of the second round, being able to get their choice of whoever, being able to package those picks and move up if there's somebody they really love at the end of the first round that falls. And then the Packers ultimately get what they wanted, right? They get the 13th pick. They get to still select again 2 picks later at 15, and they get that future capital, which is what I really think probably a lot of this holdup is. I heard an interesting point that while a lot of people don't necessarily love this draft and it's been very, very hard to evaluate, Mel Kiper himself said if some team knocks this particular draft out the park with who they select, their scouts for the draft should get a raise because this has been a very hard draft to get a pulse on. A lot of outliers in terms of like physical stature, skill traits, length of time, being able to put together game film, different things of that variety. So I think a lot of what's happening there is that we know the 2024 draft should be, spoken in a different tone, right? Drake May, Caleb Williams coming out at the top, potentially a guy like Marvin Harrison that's going to be roaming around out there. So people are definitely more so in love with the 2024 draft. I'm already seeing mock drafts for that one. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I believe, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure when I was checking this out, if any team, and we're not just talking this scenario, pulls off something like this, I believe this would be the first 3-team trade in the NFL because it's just not how teams generally operate. In one-to-one trades, generally there's usually a clear loser up front right away anyway. So risking that by bringing in an additional team kind of lessens the value for everybody in most cases. But I think for this particular draft, this works out pretty well. So again, let me know what your thoughts are. What would you do with the number 20 pick? Knowing that we get Aaron Rodgers in this trade, and then you probably still have your selection of guys. If you still want to go tackle, or if you want to take a risk on JMS a little bit earlier, the center, different things like that. So looking forward to your thoughts. I'll catch you guys again. Peace.